to the group that's here, good to see you tonight. We'll go through our presentation, and then we'll do our questions and answers at the end. In fact, the first slide here will help you with everything what we're trying to do here. And let me see, I got to go one more. Here we are. This week in Digging Deeper, we're going to cover the following. We're going to look how to use the materials to study the book of Isaiah, the materials you have, and how to make them work. I've got some questions that people have asked. We're going to look at the structure of Isaiah and how it's laid out, because this is really important. In fact, we'll be using this every week, and we'll talk to people online about how to get these outlines in. There's the problem of understanding Isaiah's writings, and we have to talk about that, because if you can begin to understand the problems of reading Isaiah and seeing what's happening there, make a difference. And those center two are about that. And then we're going to come to questions and answers. Now, before I go to this outline right here, I want to tell you that this is my outline right here. This is 2 years of work on 17 cards. So this is what we're shooting for. We're finishing this first card tonight. So for me, that's okay. There's only 16 more cards to go. That's a simple way to do it. Until you realize how many lessons and what the depth of that is in the process. The other thing is, and I'll mention again a little bit, but I hope you understand that what we're putting in the Digging Deeper on Sunday mornings is to help you go deeper in this study. And so if you get the opportunity to do that, and those watching online, I'll mention it now, it's at sonrisechurch.com. Click on the media button, the 2025 messages. They can download this. They can download the outline that we've got here. We'll be looking at in a minute. It's all available there for them. So in this process, let me take you to the take you through this Digging Deeper week 1 and talk about what we have here and the materials I've given you. Some of you people have questions. I know some people are a little confused. Somebody said the other day they didn't want to write anything in it because they didn't want to do it and mess up what I wanted them to do. Well, I want to tell you something. You cannot mess up this study at this particular point. You know, there's just no way you can do that at all. So what we have is we have the Bible. Actually, this is the book of Isaiah. It's the ESV journal study, and then we provide here at the church, we provided covers. If you want to put your cover on and put your name on it, if you can do that. If you just want to, however you want to do it, we made that available to you. I want to tell just for a second, those people online, they can go to Amazon Prime or Amazon.com. If you have Amazon Prime, it's only $5.99. These are a super deal at this point. And with Amazon Prime, it'll be there in most places the next day, overnight. And if you have to buy shipping on it, I think shipping is only $3 something on it. So it's actually cheaper to get this through Amazon than through any Christian organization or even through the bookstore down in Centralia. This is the cheapest way to get it through Amazon at this particular point. All the Christian book sites have listing this for $10 to $12. $5.99 is Amazon, so that's a super good deal. In fact, it's cheaper now than we bought over 2/3 of ours a year ago or 2 years ago when we first got them. So we have the Bible, and we're going to look inside of it here in just a minute to show you what to do with that and everything like that. The next thing we got you these pens. And I want to share with you that the confusion over the pens, these are erasable pens. And so understand that I can't use a book like this if I can't correct the mistake somehow in it, because it's bound. And that's a personal thing. I have to tell you, those in high school you had those ring binders. I couldn't use those ring binders with a spiral bound binders because it drove me crazy to have something in there wrong and have it in there all the time. So this allows it, and I'll show you in a second. Now, for anybody who hasn't done this yet, they're simple. You see the little handle on it where the part where it says where you hook it on your pocket, you just push it up and down. That's how you do it. Now, when I talk about an erasable pen, when you do this pen, you can only use the eraser on the end of it, and it's a friction eraser. It's actually heat that causes it to go away. It's a chemical reaction that heat causes it to go away. So you don't want to leave, if you do a lot of work on one of these, you don't want to leave this out in the hot sun or it becomes invisible, and then you could be in trouble. So if it gets too warm. Yeah, so also you got a ruler, and I'm going to show you how to use the ruler here in a minute. People say, well, what do I need a ruler for? And Ray and I were talking the other day. I said, Ray, so you could draw a straight line. So I just want to say that's the reason we have a ruler. And the other thing we have here, and I handed out tonight to all of you, is an outline. And this outline over the next 16 and a half weeks is going to be invaluable to you. I really believe that. We're going to talk about the outline here in a couple minutes and lay it down for you. And then those here tonight, you have a clipboard, but I remind you, give the clipboards back before you leave. We're in the sanctuary, so I wanted to have a little table for you to be able to work off of, and I think it'll help you some in that process. So these are the materials we provided for you at this particular point in time. So that's the materials we have. Now I want to go deeper in the materials we have a little bit here tonight and talk about it some and using your materials. And this is the Bible we have. I said I've got mine right here. We'll be talking about it. See a page out in a minute. This is the ESV journal for the book of Isaiah. It has the ESV text in it. It's as good as any other text. You know, it's a good text to use and be able to follow along in. If you don't have one here, you have them. You can pick them up tonight. If you're in the local area and you're watching and you want to contact me and come by and get one, we still have a few extras that we could do that with. If you live outside the area, the quickest way to get one is to go to Amazon and order it. Like I said, it was $5.99, so it's a pretty good price if you've got Amazon Prime, or it's about $10 without Prime, which is still a good price. Well, that's the materials. Now, inside of this book, when you look at the inside, in fact, I went to page, I think it's 594 here or something like that. It's Isaiah 53. And if you'll go to Isaiah 53, 294, and take a look, and most of you all have this wonderful blank page, but I'm using this one because in a second when I show you something, you'll be able to see it. As you notice, the one side has the text, the other side has room, but there's also all sorts of room around this. And so what I want to do is I'm going to bring up my notes from this page. Now, you won't be able to see everything clearly, but I'll be able to point out some things for you on them, and you'll be able to see it when you read your Bibles there in front of you. So this is what mine looks like. In fact, almost every page of mine looks like this at this particular point. In fact, this is mine right here, and if I would lose this right now, I would just cry a whole lot. Let me tell you something. There's a lot of, all my notes are right there at this particular point. That's what it looks like. Now, here's what I want you to see. The ruler on the side, on the side of the page there, look at verses 13, 14, and 15 at the top of the page. You see, it's actually part of it, but 13, 14, 15 is actually the first stanza of an important part. In fact, we'll spend 1 week on this stanza coming up later this year. So whenever it comes time, you can just kind of mark that stanza and kind of set it, go, the first stanza of this section. I also have beyond that, I have a line that says all the way in the edge says the suffering servant. And this is the suffering servant song. And it goes from Isaiah 52:13 to Isaiah 53, I want to make sure I get it right, 53:12, the whole chapter. But what happens is you can begin to bunch these things along the side. You begin to draw a line and show, and if you come to the bottom page and something continues, you just put a little arrow, you put a little block off at the top to show how it works. The purpose of this book is to write in it, to mark in it, to use it to study. It's something that hopefully you can go back to at another point and open this thing up and go, oh, I've got all these notes. And these are your notes, so you should understand them. And when you see your notes, they'll refresh you. And that's the whole goal here as we're looking at it, because we're going to be talking about the complications of Isaiah in just a minute here. Some of the other things you can do on the side where I have my notes, you can't see it very well, but beside each note, I have like a number, like I have number 12 or number 13, and then I circle it. And then I know that that is the number which corresponds to the verse. And so if I'm making a note that goes with verse number 13, which I have right here, and I have, it starts out, the servant is shown as acting wisely. So I have the note with that. I can easily tell where it's at because I have that number taken across. So I just do a little circle and I put the number in it. The other thing I do on a regular basis, and I have it here several times, is there is, and I don't see how, it's a little, not as quite as clear as I thought it was going to be, but maybe it's clearer up here on verse 13 and 15. See where that boxed in those words? But something particular that stands out or you need to talk about, I make sure that I take that word, box it in, and I'll take it to the side, or I'll draw an arrow away from it. In verse number 15, when I come off to this side over here, I have it boxed in. It says, he sprinkles, and then after what follows after that explains that word or what it means. And so what I'm sharing with you is that you can do whatever system you want, But if you work on a system that does this for you, it will make a real difference. And when you get going from the beginning and following through, and then like I have where over here where it says he, him, he, stuff like that, there are places where there are words or phrases stand out in a section. And so circle those, underline them, double underline them, whatever it want to be. If you want to get a colored one, by the way, they make colored these erasable pens in all different colors. So if you want to get some more of those, you can just go on Amazon and order them. I mean, they have whole packs of them, but I usually use just the black, and I think I have a little bit of blue that I've used a couple of times, but I found it easier just to like do my boxes and put it over here and draw my lines and notate with numbers. And then don't be afraid to write along the edge, put notes above, below, reference numbers, whatever you want to do. The purpose of this book is not to do it for me. I'm not going to grade you. You know, if I never see it, that's between, you know, I think a lot of people will probably have blank books. That's still, I'm giving them the opportunity. But what I'm hoping is that you'll begin to do it. This week, this last Sunday, we did 2 verses. We did Isaiah 1:1 and Isaiah 1:8. Well, if you read those, hopefully you remember something. You might make a little note there, you know, right beside each one of those. And as we do this, as I mentioned to somebody before we got started, those people online didn't hear that, but you know, we did just 2 verses last week. We got a place coming up where we'll do 10 to 13 chapters in 1 week. And so you're going to go like, whoa, but it's not that. It's a section that just, it's easy to do that for me, and I think it'd be easy for you to follow along when you see it. Because we do like the 13th chapter through the 23rd chapter. So that's 11 chapters right there. And we got a couple others we could do with it. So what I'm saying is that when you look at your book and you can see that, let me go back here. This is what it looks like. Most of yours look like right now. But hopefully as you work on your book and you continue to put things in, your book will start to fill in. And as your book starts to fill in, you'll begin to realize, hey, I'm learning here. I've got something to hang on to. I know that, see, I went through 4 or 5 different commentaries from beginning to end, every verse, looking at them. And I found the materials I wanted. When I was reading this the other day and parts of this the other day, getting ready for this week and next week, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember that. It pops out because you've done the work. You put it down in your own writing. It's ready for you to use. So I want to encourage you to not be afraid. And the other thing is, remember, I gave you erasable pens. If you feel like you've made a mistake, you can do it. The other thing you might want to think about getting is one of these. Y'all know what this is? This is whiteout strips. In fact, just before verse 13, the people online seem to be going like this, and it's all over there for them. So just before verse 13, there was a heading that had nothing to do with what was being said here. I remind you that all the headings are people's opinions. They're not in the Bible. They're not part of the Bible. The chapter verses, the chapter numbers, they were put in there way back when. And whenever whoever puts the ESV Bible together, that committee writes the headings they put in here. Sometimes they're pretty good. Sometimes they're just totally off the mark. This is your main text. This is for you to, when we come on Wednesday nights or when you're working during the week, when you take, as I said a while ago, you take your bulletin and you're working with something and suddenly you realize something, put some notes in here. You know, if nothing else on Isaiah 1:1, you could put all the references to these kings. Remember we talked about all the references to the king on Sunday morning and I gave those to you? Well, they're right here. You could put those in Isaiah 1:1 so that you knew how to make the reference to go back over and do the check over for those guys. We talked about Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. We mentioned Manasseh. He's all the stuff's on him in here too. So you can do that. Now, let's go forward a little bit more here, and I want to share with you about the outline of Isaiah. This is the outline you have right here. I want to share with you that when we talk about the outline of Isaiah and go over some materials, there is a standard thought and outline of Isaiah. And this is what people say. The book is traditionally divided into 2 parts, chapters 1 through 39 and 40 through 46. That's okay. But it's really not the best short outline because there's a part missing in there, and I'll tell it to you in just a second. Now, you'll hear somebody go, well, there's 39 chapters in the Old Testament, there's 39 chapters in the first part of Isaiah, and there's 27 chapters in the last part. That lines up with the New Testament, and that's what, it's just coincidence. That's all it is at this particular, that's just coincidences that way. I want to share with you, it's not a bad outline, but what they're going to say is, what they're trying to tell you is that the first half of the book is all about Judah and sin, and the second half of the book, of those last 27 chapters, all about the resurrection and Jesus. That's not true. You have on your, right there on the first page, you can see all the red. Right, that's all messianic stuff. It's messianic all the way through this book. In fact, there's more than that probably, but that's the ones I got down at this particular point. So messianic means Jesus Christ or the Messiah, about Jesus the Messiah. And so the messianic stuff is all through here. But a better outline, in my opinion, if you want a simple outline, covers 3 parts, and it has breaking down this way: Judgment and Hope of Judah, verses 1 through 35. Now, it has all the different parts you have in yours, and I think you've got a little chart on yours, and the side of yours, a little emblem where it talks about the red is messianic, and green has something to do, I think, the church. Thank you, because I don't have it on mine right here right now. And then you've got a purple one, which deals with the servant songs. And then you've got a yellow, which is information dealing with the woes, if I remember correctly. And we'll cover all of those as we go through it. We're going to go through the 5 servant songs. And some of you you probably don't know this, but traditionally it's been 4. There's actually 5, and I lean towards the 5th servant song, which we'll talk about later. So you have Judgment and Hope of Judea, the first part, but it has all sorts of stuff mixed in there. Then the second part is kind of a little part in here, chapters 36 through 39. This is the crossover. This is where you're no longer talking about Assyria. It's a prophecy about Babylon coming, and about how Hezekiah deals with Babylon. Remember, I talked Sunday morning about Hezekiah getting sick and turning his wall, and the ambassadors coming down, him showing and everything. And the Isaiah comes and says, "You dipstick, you just for that you're going to lose everything." And then Hezekiah finds out. Isaiah goes, "Well, it won't be you, but your children who suffer." And Hezekiah is like, "Okay, that's fine with me, just so it's not me." And let me throw something here that I don't know if I mentioned this Sunday morning or not, what that is. And let me bring that into modern times, so maybe relate to it modern times. When we talk about Hezekiah goes, okay, it doesn't affect me, and I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to be peaceful. Everything's great for me. I'm not worried about it. If we look at our country right now, and I'm going to try to relate this all the time to our country and who we are. You go into Target, you go into Walmart, you go into almost any store in this town that sells a lot of stuff in volume, and most of that stuff is not made in this country because they're more worried about quick profit. And let me give a perfect example. Walmart, when Sam Walton was alive, when you went in Walmart, he had signs all over the place, made in the USA. I remember so clearly, and he was so big on that. Well, he died, and his children, was it 5 children, 6 children? I'm not exactly sure. They took over the company. And you walk into Walmart now, you find something made in the USA. It's a miracle because it's all about the profit. Well, how long can we do that? How long can we continue to ship more money out of the country than that's coming into the country? It just doesn't work that way in the long run. But what it is my profit today is more important than what's going to happen in 20 years to the country. And we see businesses doing this and businessmen doing this. And you go into Walmart and you go into the clothing section. It's all made in Pakistan, India, and Vietnam. Yeah, that's the big places they're made. Why? Well, cheap labor, sure. But at the same time, if we don't have those factories here, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. We got that short term. We all get something cheap. I shop at Walmart, folks. I shop at Target, folks, sometimes. I go to, even going into Costco, bless them, a lot of stuff in there. You look on the back of it, where's it say? Made in China. We got new speakers this week. Mackie speakers. Mackie is supposed to be a big U.S. company. Speakers made in China. Just the way it is. There's no way around it. So I'm sharing with you that this second section is about this crossover in Babylon, moving from Assyria to Babylon. And the third is the hope of salvation. And this third section, chapters 40 through 66, has a real strong emphasis on hope and salvation. And I'll get you there in a minute to help you understand how you're going to know that. So what we have is this outline, and I really believe if you use this outline, it will help you. Tonight, in just a minute, we're going to use our outline. And if I help you with the outline in a minute tonight and show you how it works, I think it'll make a real difference for you. So what we're going to do is, let me go on down through this some. I got to see the next note. This detailed outline is vital to being able to understand the book and keep you on track in your study. If you look at a verse, like we're going to look at a couple verses here in just a minute, and one of the other slides coming back, we'll look at these verses, then you can look on your outline and see where they fall. See what's happening there and what's going on. There are not two outlines that are totally agree. I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of outlines, and that's not an exaggeration. Isaiah is complex, and Isaiah is hard to understand. At the same time, I believe we can help you. And my last statement up here is important. Your kingdom image shapes your understanding of the book of Isaiah. Some of you are going to go, what is my kingdom image? I'm going to give you two answers to that. First, the only thing I'm talking about Sunday morning, this coming Sunday morning, is kingdoms. We're going to look at kingdoms. I'm going to explain this one thing to you, because your kingdom image determines how you look at Isaiah. Now, I will show you Sunday morning the two key kingdom images there are. And the one kingdom image is about Jesus Christ coming back and setting up an earthly kingdom, and the other is about Jesus Christ having a heavenly kingdom. And the problem with that is that most people don't know what the foundation of those two teachings are. And I'm going to share that Sunday morning and show you the difference. And one of them says, well, God made a mistake, and the church is a mistake. The church is here just to fill a gap. The church is temporary. God never really intended it, but he had to do it because Jesus Christ came to earth and he had to die for our sins. I don't believe that. One of them says God got prophecy wrong, that God prophesied it'd be 490 years, and now it's been 2,500 years for a prophecy, but hey, it's close enough. To me, that's not close enough. So we're going to talk about these kingdom images on Sunday morning and help you make a decision, because if you can have the right kingdom image, it changes the entire book of Isaiah for you. Now, I want to say, if you have the one kingdom image, you see it one way, the whole book one way. You have the other kingdom image, you see the book the other way. I have the second kingdom image, and so I see the book the other way. I see the book as relating to us today and the church and what's happening in the world today. And I see it as what God has promised, and I see that most of Isaiah is already being fulfilled around us, and most people don't even know it. And so I think it's important for you to see and understand. Now, let's talk about understanding the Isaiah text and some problems with it. And as we do this, I think I can help you see. I made this come up purposely like this because it can be confusing, can it, sometimes? This is from Sunday morning, and the book it says the vision of Isaiah. But when it says the vision of Isaiah, it really is about all these different things. And let me set it up for you. Isaiah preached from between 40 and 60 years. We don't have an exact time. Over that period of time, he had all these messages and all these things he did, and somehow these are the ones he brought together. But Isaiah didn't put chapters between them or breaks between them. He just, okay, I said this, I think you need to know this, need to know this. Sometimes it's like in the 6th chapter where he says, the vision of Isaiah, I saw the Lord high and lifted up. He starts this, sometimes there's breaks where it's clear. Other times there's not. In fact, we're going to look at one of those this evening just to show you how that works. But I want you to understand that when we look at Isaiah, he has his preaching, like what I do on Sunday morning. Talk to you. He preached to Judah. He preached in Jerusalem. He preached to that part of the country, the southern part of the kingdom. He was in the palace walking around, talking to the kings and the people there. He did this for 40 or 60 years and wrote his stuff down, but only part of it ended up there. I thought about this today. I have a stack of books I've written, and if I were to stack them up, they'd be over this high. Booklets and pamphlets and other things I've done. And yet, I've not done that most of my ministry. I've done it here or there. I haven't written anything in a couple years. I'm getting ready to work on something right now. But, if we took everything I'd done, what would it take to do it? I cannot imagine how much Isaiah had that he didn't get in the book of Isaiah. This is what God wanted in there, but this is preaching. His personal life's in there twice. The 6th chapter, and then later on in about the 20-some chapter. I don't remember that. So his personal life. Prophecies are in there. And prophecies come in all different forms in Isaiah. Some of them are right away. Isaiah walks into Hezekiah and gives him a prophecy. He tells him to predict, you're going to die. Get things in order. That's a prophecy. That's the future. Jesus Christ does this when he does the setting at the table. He said, I will not again drink of the fruit of the vine until I enter the kingdom of God. Well, the next day, he gets the sour wine on the cross. That's a prophecy, a short-term prophecy that's fulfilled. And then he has longer-term prophecies about the country being destroyed in 70 years. And then he has longer prophecies about the Messiah coming in 700 years. And these are all intertwined. These prophecies are there, and sometimes he's just going along. And a perfect example of this is the 7th chapter, dealing with King Ahaz. I think that's who it was at a particular point. And the army was coming, and Isaiah says, don't worry about it. They're going to be wiped out. And he says, well, I don't know whether it's going to happen or not. And he said, well, I tell you what, you ask for a sign from God, and God will give you a sign. He said, I won't ask God for a sign. The king said, I won't ask God for a sign. So in Isaiah 7:12, we read that God says, okay, you won't give a sign. I'll give you a sign. And a virgin will bear a baby. Wait a minute. That's 700 years before it happens. What type of sign is that? You see, in the book of Isaiah, that's one of those things that you have trouble with because almost all of the prophecies, all the things that are really important are way out in the future for these people. And while I'm thinking about it, I was going over this afternoon, understand that whenever God is speaking to the southern kingdom, to Judah, when he's speaking to the people in Jerusalem through Isaiah, basically he says, there's no hope. You guys, it's over. And then he says, but 700 years from now, not using that, there's going to be a Messiah. There's going to be a kingdom. There's going to be the church. So that's where that's at that particular point. And he has political observations, with the kings, with the country, with the nations around that they're doing, what's happening at that particular point. The style is prophetic and it's poetic. And when I say it's prophetic and poetic, let's look at a couple of verses. And you have your Bibles with you, so I hope you do. Go to Isaiah 11:6. And those people watching online, you get to go to Isaiah 11:6 too, because I don't put it in the overhead for anybody. But Isaiah 11:6, and you hear this all the time. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fatted calf together, and a little child shall lead them. And there are those people who want to tell us, well, that's a coming future kingdom. This is prophetic and it is poetic. You say the girl has lips like rose petals. Does she really have lips like rose petals? Look like, sorry, that look a little weird, sticking out of there like that or whatever. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb. These are symbols, and we'll talk about them more when we come to it. After we talk about next Sunday, this will make a lot more sense when we talk about it. Go with me to Isaiah 2:2. Just back to the beginning. Isaiah 2. In fact, we'll be in the 2nd chapter here for a couple of these verses now. So Isaiah 2:2. It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest mountain and shall be lifted up above the hills. Now, if you take that literally, you're talking about God building this new mountain and lifting something up and making something happen. But here's what I want you to do. Do you have your outlines with you? So look up your outlines and see what's happening in the first part of the 2nd chapter. On this first page, you go down, chapter 1's judgment, Judah's rebellion. Chapter 2, judgment now with the hope of the future. And you look at the first part of it, the mountain of the house of the Lord, and what color is that in your red, dealing with the Messiah. So this is not about the distant future or a coming kingdom. This is about Jesus and the church. And this picture that he shall come to pass in the latter days, we are in the latter days. That the mountain of the house of the Lord, it's a picture. God's lifting up his people, lifting up his church, lifting up everything. And the house of the Lord will be visible to everyone. And so that choice goes there, and God makes it something that, and he talks in other places, that people will stream to it. Even as people reject the church, millions are saved every year around the world. People get saved. We've had people recently come to God in this church who I knew years ago as atheists. I've seen people return to the Lord after years being away from God in this last year. And that's not only happening here, it's happening other places. And I believe where the gospel is being preached, people are being set free. And this is the mountain of the house of the Lord, and what God is doing is being lifted up. Now go with me down to verses, in the same chapter, verses 6 through 11. I want you to notice that right here he's talking about the church. But we go down to verse 6. For you have rejected your people, the house of Jacob. Now, I want to stop and say something. He uses 3 words or 3 titles in the Bible, in the book of Isaiah, in particular, to describe the southern kingdom. He calls them Judah, Jacob, and Jerusalem. So the 3 J's in that southern, so you remember that. Sometimes he'll be talking about Jacob, sometimes he's talking about Judah, sometimes he's talking about Jerusalem, but he's talking about the southern kingdom. And all the times he says, for you have rejected your people, the house of Jacob. He said the southern kingdom's in trouble. Now remember, the northern kingdom has had 18 kings. Every one of them has been wicked. So they're about to be taken in by Assyria. But the southern kingdom has had some good kings, but they're just slow in their sinfulness. I don't know how to say it. They're behind the curve, but they're going to get there. They're working their way towards being out of touch with God. He says, because they are full of things from the east, he's saying that they have accepted Eastern religions into their place, of fortune tellers like the Philistines, and they strike hands with the children of foreigners. It means when they strike hands, if David, when you came in tonight, I shook your hand. Ray, you came in tonight, I shook your hand. And some of the others, we patted each other on the back. What he's saying is, you reached out their hand, they made fellowship. They made friends with foreigners, made treaties with foreigners right there. And he continues from there in verse 7. Their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. Their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. If you look back in the Old Testament and the commands that God gave the Hebrew people, they weren't to use chariots and they weren't to use horses. In fact, their kings were instructed to ride on donkeys. And remember, it's Solomon who breaks that with 1,000 horses and all the concubines and all the stables and all the chariots. But what is he saying here? God is saying, I gave you directions and you didn't follow them. Verse 8, their land is filled with idols. The book of Isaiah, God is upset. At times, God is all but screaming mad at the people in the southern kingdom about their idol worship. They bowed down to the works of their hands, to what their own fingers have made. There's a place in Isaiah where he says, look, you people, he says, you go out and get a stump, you cut it in half, you burn half of it to keep warm, and the other half you turn into an idol and you worship it right next to the warm stove. And he's going, are you guys, stupid? You're worshiping your wood? Verse 9, so man is humbled, and each one is brought low. Do not forgive them. What's he saying? Because of what you've done, you're going to be punished. And here's Isaiah speaking, talking about this. Remember I said it's judgment and hope. And judgment is now, and hope for them is way off in the future. Verse 10, enter into the rock and hide in the dust. What's he saying? He said, go hide in caves. Go hide get away from here. You don't know how much trouble you're in. From before the terror of the Lord and from the splendor of his majesty. The haughty looks of men shall be brought low, and the lofty pride of men shall be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. That phrase in your Bibles, here's a note for you. Put a little square around it if you want to do a note there. In that day, he uses it 42 times in Isaiah to talk about the coming day of the Lord. In that day is 42 times in Isaiah. It's a key phrase. He just puts it out there. He says, in that day, the Lord alone will be exalted. The Lord alone will be lifted up. And so what we have here is the style is poetic and the language is poetic. And sometimes he talks about the church being a mountain, and other times he talks about the church being a plant. Remember what Jesus said? He said the kingdom of God, in fact, we'll look at this real quick Sunday morning, but the kingdom of God is like a treasure buried in a field. It's like a seed that's planted and it grows into this big thing. What's it? That's poetic language. The only difference in Isaiah is Jesus says it is like. Isaiah just, what does Isaiah do? Isaiah just tells the story and doesn't say it is like. He goes, here's a mountain, here's this, you guys figure it out. You know, laying it out for them at that particular point. Is written over 40 to 60 year period, as I said a while ago, so understand this is not everything he wrote, but this is what's saved. And I want to say that some people want to say, well, the reason Isaiah has two different people wrote it, I've been writing for all 50 years I've been in ministry. I write sermons, I write books, I write study guides. I just, when I went in ministry years ago, there weren't a lot of the things you could buy that you can buy now and order online and have like we have the study guides. I had to write all the study guides. And so I got really good at writing study guides and writing that type of materials and finally writing out books. In fact, I did books I've done. I enjoy that so much because it makes my mind think differently about what I'm writing. But here's what I want you to understand. The stuff I wrote at the beginning, I'm almost embarrassed to read now. You know? Because it is a different level, a different thought process. Isaiah, I believe, when you read him, understand that he goes through process. I don't think his is embarrassing as mine would be, but I think Isaiah is growing and expanding and learning. And when you see this whole thing, I write a book about sermons, it's one way. I write a book about a study guide, it's a different way. I write a book about something else, it's another way. Isaiah has taken stuff from all these type of things, and he's just stuck them together. So it's got these different styles, these different feels. I mean, when we come to chapters 13 through 23, that's one style. I mean, he's just boom, 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 again and again. And when I start showing it to you, you understand how we can do 11 chapters in 1 week, because it's not that difficult, at least to do the overview of it. You can get the picture that's happening there. So he does all of this at that particular point, and we see it. So the problem with Isaiah in reading him is you have to take the time to understand him. And that's what I'm hoping I can do for you through this process. Last Sunday, we laid the foundation about understanding and looking at the whole book and everything. This Sunday, we're going to talk, the coming Sunday, we're talking about kingdoms. Later on, for you who know what I'm talking about, we'll talk about, when we get to Isaiah, the 14th chapter, we'll talk about heaven, heaven, or heaven, because that's really important for us. But as we go through this book, as if I can open it up to you and you can start making those notes, those things will start popping at you. And I'm hoping the next time you read in that day in the book of Isaiah, you go, oh, wait a minute. That happens 42 times in this book. That's an important saying. That's something for God to have. So this brings us to the last part I want to do tonight. And what I want to do at this point is see if you have questions. Now, we'll handle the questions several ways. One, if it's a question I can answer, I will do it. If it's something that's I know we're going to cover later, I'll say, hey, we're going to hold off on that, but I'll get to it. If you ask me something I don't know the answer to or don't quite have the material, I will say, I'm going to quote from a White House press secretary, I'll circle back to you.